There are voices that entertain. There are voices that impress. And then, once in a generation, if the world is truly lucky, there is a voice that changes everything. A voice that doesn't just sing a song, but reaches inside the chest of every human being within earshot, grabs hold of something ancient and true, and refuses to let go. That voice belonged to one woman, one extraordinary, fearless genius of a woman. Her name was Nina Simone. Born Eunice Kathleen Wayman on February 21, 1933, in Tryon, North Carolina, she arrived into a world that was not yet ready for her, though it desperately needed her. The sixth of 8 children in a family of modest means, young Eunice discovered the piano before she could fully understand what it meant to be gifted. By the time she was 3 years old, she was picking out hymns by ear at her local church. By the time she was 6, she was performing publicly, stopping people in their tracks, making them lean forward in their seats as if the air itself had shifted. There was something happening when this child played, something that could not be explained by talent alone. It was calling. Her teacher, a classically trained pianist named Muriel Mizanovich, a woman who recognized the fire in young Eunice, took her on as a student free of charge and helped raise funds so she could continue her musical education. Because of that extraordinary act of belief, a legend was given wings. Eunice went on to study at the Juilliard School in New York City, preparing to audition for the prestigious Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. She was rejected. And while that rejection carried a sting that never fully left her, what it ignited inside her cannot be measured in any conservatory. It launched her into a world that would ultimately bow at her feet. She took the stage name Nina Simone. Nina from a friend's nickname, Simone borrowed from the French actress Simone Signoret, and she began performing in clubs along the Atlantic City Strip. She sang to pay her bills. But what came out of her was never just a performance. It was a reckoning. Night after night, audiences sat in silence between applause, not because they didn't know what to do, but because what they were hearing was so profoundly moving, they needed a moment to remember how to breathe. In 1958, Nina Simone released her debut album, Little Girl Blue, and the world tilted on its axis. That record, recorded when she was just 24 years old, contained a version of I Loves You, Porgy, drawn from George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, that became her first major hit, reaching number 18 on the Billboard pop charts. But it wasn't the chart position that mattered. It was the feeling. Listeners described hearing that song and feeling as though someone had finally said, out loud, the thing they had been carrying in silence for years. That is the Nina Simone effect. That is what no one has ever been able to replicate. What made Nina Simone unlike any artist before her, and unlike any artist since, was the complete impossibility of categorizing her. She refused to be put in a box, and the music itself refused along with her. She was jazz, she was classical, she was blues, she was gospel, she was folk, she was soul. She was all of these things at once, and none of them completely, because Nina Simone was a genre unto herself. Her piano playing carried the architecture and discipline of Bach, alongside the raw emotion of the Mississippi Delta. Her voice, that incomparable, smoky, velvet-wrapped instrument, could drop to a whisper that made you lean in close, and then rise to a power that felt like the sky opening up above you. Through the late 1950s and into the 1960s, she released album after album that showcased her breathtaking range. Nina Simone and Her Friends, The Amazing Nina Simone, Nina Simone at Town Hall. Each record a document of an artist who was expanding what music was allowed to be. Nina at Newport, recorded live at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1960, showed the world what it meant to hold an audience completely in the palm of your hand. Every person in that crowd was hers. Every breath they took was in rhythm with what she chose to give them. And then, because Nina Simone was never merely a musician, she was a human being fully awake to the world around her. History called, and she answered with everything she had. On September 15, 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, was bombed by white supremacists. 4 little girls, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Carol Denise McNair, were killed. They were children. They were innocent. They were gone. Nina Simone sat down, and in less than an hour, in a state she later described as a need to do something, not just feel something, but do something, she wrote Mississippi Goddam. It was a song unlike anything that had ever been heard before on a mainstream stage. It was furious. It was precise. It was unflinching. It named names, it pointed fingers, it refused the comfortable language of patience and gradualism, and said in plain terms what Black America had been living through and what the movement was demanding. She performed it, recorded it, released it, and the country shook. Radio stations across the American South returned the records, literally shipped them back broken in pieces as an act of protest. Nina Simone wore those broken records like a badge of honor. She did not soften her message. She did not apologize. She stood on stages across America and sang truth into the faces of power. And something extraordinary happened. People woke up. People who had been comfortable in their silence were confronted by a woman at a piano who would not let them look away. She became a central figure in the civil rights movement, performing at rallies, marches, and benefits. She was close to key figures of the movement. She wrote and performed To Be Young, Gifted, and Black, a song that became an anthem of Black pride and possibility, a song that told young Black men and women not just that they were equal, but that they were exceptional, that their existence was a gift to the world. Lorraine Hansberry, the playwright and Nina's close friend for whom the song was dedicated, had used that phrase, and Nina turned it into a declaration that echoed across generations. That song is still sung today. It is still needed today. It still hits exactly as hard. Her 1964 album, Nina Simone in Concert, captured the electricity of her live performances and the depth of her political commitment in a single document. Her 1965 release, I Put a Spell on You, broadened her audience even further, with the title track becoming one of the most recognizable recordings of the 20th century. That voice, that piano, that absolute, unapologetic authority. You hear it and you understand immediately why no one has ever come close to replacing her. In 1967, she released Silk and Soul, an album that moved between tenderness and defiance with the ease of a woman who had long since stopped asking permission for how she felt. Ain't Got No, I Got Life, her medley drawn from the musical Hair, became a joyful, roaring celebration of human existence and resilience that climbed charts on both sides of the Atlantic. She took a song about having nothing and turned it into the most powerful argument for everything. That was her genius. She could take the raw material of pain and transmute it into something that made you feel invincible. By the time she recorded Here Comes the Sun in 1971, her stunning, soulful interpretation of the George Harrison classic, among many other extraordinary tracks, Nina Simone had demonstrated something no music industry executive or critic could have predicted when she first walked into a recording studio. She was not just an artist for a moment, she was an artist for all time. Her interpretations of other people's songs became more definitive than the originals. When Nina Simone sang something, it became hers. It became the version. It became the truth. And the awards came, as they must when greatness is undeniable. She received Grammy nominations across her career, and in 2003, long overdue, as the world finally catching up to what it had always known, she was awarded the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Not because her career was over, not because she was a relic, but because a Lifetime Achievement Award was the only category large enough to begin to hold what she had given to music. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018, a recognition that once again made clear that she had transcended every genre that had ever tried to claim her. But here is what is most remarkable. Here is what you must truly understand about Nina Simone. The awards are the footnotes. They are the world's attempt to put a number on the infinite. What cannot be quantified is this. Right now, tonight, somewhere in the world, a young person is hearing Nina Simone for the first time. Maybe they stumbled upon Feeling Good, that volcanic orchestral declaration of freedom that she made her own in 1965, and something inside them cracked open. Maybe they heard Ne me quitte pas and discovered in her voice a language for the grief they had been carrying. Maybe they heard I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free, and suddenly understood what it meant to long for something with your whole body. And in that moment of hearing, that young person becomes part of something much larger than themselves. They become part of the unbroken chain of human beings whose lives were changed by Nina Simone. That is her legacy. Not the records sold, though they number in the tens of millions. Not the countries she performed in, though they span every inhabited continent. Not even the movement she helped fuel, though that movement bent the arc of history. Her legacy is the moment of recognition. The moment when a human being hears her music and thinks, finally, someone understands. Finally, someone said it. Finally, I am not alone. She passed from this world on April 21st, 2003, in Carry-le-Rouet in the south of France, where she had made her home in her later years. The outpouring of grief from every corner of the globe was immediate and overwhelming. Artists who had spent their entire careers trying to approach what she had achieved wept openly. Radio stations played her music for hours without interruption. People who had never met her felt as though they had lost a member of their family. Because in the truest sense, they had. Nina Simone was family to anyone who had ever needed music to survive. And more than 2 decades after her passing, the question is not whether her influence endures. The question is whether influence is even the right word for what she left behind. Influence suggests something indirect, something filtered through imitation. What Nina Simone left behind is not influence, it is presence. Her recordings do not feel like the past. They feel alive. They feel current. They feel urgent. Put on Mississippi Goddam today and tell me it doesn't sound like it was written this morning. Put on Young, Gifted, and Black and tell me there is a young person alive who doesn't need to hear it. Put on Feeling Good and try, just try, to stay in your seat. No one has come close. Let that be said clearly and without hesitation. In the 6 decades since she first sat behind a piano in an Atlantic City club and made strangers weep, the music world has produced artists of extraordinary talent. But no one has come close to the totality of what Nina Simone was. No one has combined classical mastery, emotional depth, political courage, vocal power, and sheer, unmistakable originality in the way that she did. No one has commanded a stage the way she did. No one has looked at the world with that particular combination of love and fury and made something so beautiful from the tension between them. She stands alone. She will always stand alone. Because Nina Simone did not just make music. She made mirrors. She held them up to a country, to a world, to the human heart, and she said, "Look. Look at what you are. Look at what you could be. Look at what you are capable of. Look at what must change." And then she sat back down at the piano and played something so transcendent, so heartbreakingly beautiful, that you truly believed, that change was possible, that grace was possible, that the world could be more new. That is what she gave us. That is what she continues to give us every single day, in every corner of this earth where someone presses play and closes their eyes and feels, for a few minutes, completely understood, completely seen, completely alive. There was only one Nina Simone. There will only ever be one Nina Simone. And the world, though it does not always deserve it, will always have her music to come home to.